Good evening, everybody. My name's Krish Kandaya, and I'll offer you a warm, in fact, a very, very warm welcome to our special seminar, Making It Work, supporting Ukrainian refugees to find work in the UK. Thanks for joining us on the hottest day of the year. I don't know if we broke the hottest day ever, but it feels like a scorcher. I am in the garden trying to keep cool. And I know we've got people around the whole of the UK that are joining us, and a special welcome if you're Ukrainian and you're joining us. Laskavo prosimo. I've been having a few Ukrainian lessons from our guest who's staying with us, and she's fantastic. She's so patient. In fact, we just had a birthday party with her for her. She's been in the country maybe 2 weeks, and her English teacher turned up and some other guests, and we had a little birthday party. I wish I could remember the words to happy birthday in Ukrainian, but we did attempt to sing it. Now, this evening, we have an incredible lineup of speakers, including in a moment, we're going to hear from Lord Harrington, who's the minister in charge of the refugee resettlement from Ukraine. And actually, he's in charge of Afghanistan too. More on that later. You'll be hearing from Matthew Powell, who's the CEO of Breaking Barriers, a fantastic charity working to support refugees as they find work in the UK. You'll be hearing from an absolute expert in interviews and CV preparation, Claire Carpenter from Corn Ferry. You'll also be hearing from our good friend Tanya Orlova, who is both a refugee and an expert in trauma. And as we go through the evening, you'll also get the chance to hear from Yegor Lenovin, who runs Apora. Many of you might have been matched with your guest through Apora. They're a fantastic organization. They've got expertise in helping people find work. And last but by no means least, you'll also be hearing from representatives from the Department of Work and Pensions. So if you've got questions about not your own tax or benefits, but what that means for our refugee friends that have arrived, you can use the chat. Now, the chat is a wonderful place because you can encourage all of our speakers. Our speakers are here as a kind of generous gift. They're not being paid, sadly, for the work they're doing. They're just doing it because they're compassionate and generous-hearted. So cheer them on. If they say something you vigorously agree with, tell them. If you've got a question, please raise it. We'd ask for courteousness for all of our speakers. Listen well and engage with what they're doing. We think this is really going to help all of our friends that are looking for work to find work. And it sounds like from the recent survey we were just doing on the chat that most people, 52%, haven't found a job yet. And not everybody's found the job they really want. A lot of people have taken interim jobs. So we can talk about that as we go through. Also, it might be a fun place for you to network. Being a host, if you are a host, or if you're a Ukrainian refugee, can be quite lonely. And it wouldn't be fun if some connections could be made in the chat. If you're comfortable with telling people where in the country you are, there might be local services that are being provided that you can let people know about. That would be fantastic. So we're going to have a lot of fun. Thank you for joining us. Yes, this will be available later for you to watch in your own home at your own time. But enjoy this evening together. Now, I'm going to introduce Lord Harrington, who is one of the only ministers who didn't resign last week. I was so pleased he didn't resign because he's done a fantastic job really spearheading the Homes for Ukraine programme. And I know he's in it out of a personal passion. So over to Lord Harrington. Lord Harrington, thank you so much for joining us. First, let me say congratulations. Over 95,000 Ukrainian refugees have been welcomed to the UK. And I know you've been working around the clock to make that happen with your team. Lord Harrington, tell us why you're so passionate about helping Ukrainians come to the UK.
Krish, please stop calling me Lord Harrington. You know it's Richard, and that's perfectly fine. There's no need to show off. No, all seriousness, I was given this job in March out of the blue because, as you know, you and I first met to do with the Syrian refugees, which David Cameron gave me responsibility for. I was in politics then as an MP, and I took the job on because it wasn't just an ordinary political job. It was because of my deep feeling for refugees from all over the world. 3 out of my 4 grandparents were refugees. They were given refuge by this country. And I feel it's a duty way beyond politics, etc. And the Syrian program was limited in numbers to 20,000. But I felt that the delivery was very important. And it's easy for politicians to make promises. The actual delivering them, which is what people like you and I do, as opposed to announcing them, which is what other people do, is a big job. And then I moved on to other things in politics, and I was business minister for 2 years, and then I had a bit of a spat with Boris about Brexit, and I left politics really, not in a sulk or anything. I felt I'd had a good run and didn't like the way things were going. And in March, Michael Gove and Boris, I say then Prime Minister, he's just about still Prime Minister, called me and said, we've made an announcement about Ukrainian refugees, and with your experience, would you come back and help deliver it for us? So that was the background. And unfortunately, it's a product that we're too familiar with of human misery. It just is, and there's no other way to put it. It's doing everything that we can. And I'd just like to congratulate you and your organisation for what you've done. So many people are volunteers, so many people have come forward, but it's what the trendy expression, as we know, is civic society. But it's basically people doing things that's beyond their jobs and beyond the rest of their lives because they believe in it. And I know that's you, I know that's to your core. I know it's from your family background as well, coming from another country. And you know, I was brought up to believe this was the finest country in the world because of what it had done for my grandparents. And I'm sure you were brought up in the same way. And, you know, it's part of our job to make sure it actually is for a lot of other people, despite flaws and problems and all the stuff in our day-to-day lives.
Thank you, Richard. And I had the privilege of welcoming you to my town and showing you some of the incredible hosts and guests that have arrived here. On this call, we've probably got hundreds, maybe thousands of hosts. Is there anything you'd like to say directly to them?
Well, I'd like to say thank you so much for what you've done. This is a new program for us. It's something that has gone away from the normal government stroke national and local government way of doing it. And I'm so grateful to you, not just me, but I'm sure everyone that's in your houses and in your flats and in your spare bedrooms. And also, Krish, it's not just the people who've kindly taken in refugees, but as you know, it's all the people around that do the coffee mornings and helping with language lessons and helping with everything, transport and logistics, because it is a lot of people. But for me, the most significant thing for me is that I know if we can get this sponsorship to work, and it is working up to now in numbers, and it is working for the for what we've done up to now, which is the first few months. But I know it will help us for every tragedy that happens in the world and help to make this country what it is, a welcoming place for people from adversity.
That's brilliant. We're not going to get into the party politics because there's lots of controversy. Many of the people on this call will probably have a lot to say about the Rwanda deal. I know that's not in your remit. I like you, are trying to find common ground. What's the good that we can do in this moment? And that's what we're seeing with Ukraine. A lot of Ukrainians are here now. It's often mothers with children or sometimes some grandparents as well. How important do you think it is we help Ukrainians find jobs in the UK?
Well, I find that the employment thing is the key to everything. For taking people who are used to living independent lives away from what they regard themselves as being a burden on us. And a burden is not the word expression I'd use. I'd say it's a privilege, but I'm thinking the mentality of a lot of refugees I've spoken to is that they want to be independent. The key to it is work, and because that allows them to get into the private rented sector, it allows them to contribute to their host if they are remaining with their host, which we hope they will be. So it really is the key to everything.
Thank you for what you're doing, and really appreciate you being with us this evening.
It's a huge pleasure, Krish. Anything, I'd be delighted to help.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lord Harrington. The next session that we're going to have in August is going to look at the other pressing issue, which is housing. And so we're going to do a little poll right now. and find out how many of you are hosting, might be able to offer hosting beyond the 6 months. I know that's the original intention. That was what we signed up for, 6 months. But guess what? There's a major national housing shortage. And so there may be a need to extend that. So we'd love to hear what you have to think about that immediately. We're also conducting a poll because our next session on the 2nd of August is going to look at this housing dilemma and what we can be doing, how to have those difficult conversations about moving on, and why it might be often in our friends from Ukraine's best interest to live independently. So we're going to have that big conversation in August, but we'd love for you to fill in a little survey about that immediately now in the chat on YouTube, but also we'll link you to a Google Doc where you can tell us a little bit more about what's going on with housing. As I said with Lord Harrington, this is a record-breaking moment. Over 95,000 Ukrainians are in the country, and most of those are living with ordinary people like you and me who have opened our homes, and we're trying to do our best to wrap around and offer support to our Ukrainian friends. But it's a delight to be able to introduce you to our next guest live in, where is he? Just outside Guildford. We have Matthew, who is the CEO of Breaking Barriers. And Matthew's been working in this space for a long time now, not just with Ukraine or Afghanistan, but before that with Syria. And I've asked Matthew just to tell us some of the opportunities and challenges facing refugees as they find work here. And if you think of questions you want to raise for Matthew, I'm going to be monitoring the chat while Matthew gives his talk, and I'll come back and ask him those questions. So let's use the chat well. And Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Krish, and thanks everyone for joining. So very brief introduction about myself and Breaking Barriers. So we're a charity that I set up about 7 years ago. Similar period to now, it was off the back of the Syrian crisis, and there was a lot of support both from the general public and the business community to want to help but not know how to help. So we have grown quite significantly in that period of time and are supporting refugees across West Midlands, Greater Manchester and London. So we're supporting about 1,200 refugees per year. We predominantly support people that go through the asylum system, and we've supported people from over 70 nationalities. And over the last 12 months with both Afghanistan and Ukraine, it's been a big learning curve for us as much as everyone else in terms of a new population, a new country of origin, a new means and method of arriving in the UK. So it's been a learning curve for the refugee sector as it has been for everyone else. In terms of the support we provide specialist employment support for anyone regardless of their English language levels, their education and their aspirations. We complement that with education, training, and also English language support, everything from pre-entry ESOL, which is a lack of familiarity with the Roman alphabet, all the way to advanced business English and IELTS. And everything is free. We pay for travel expenses where necessary and scholarships for exams where necessary as well. And then a key element of our work is the work that we're doing with the private sector by offering bespoke recruitment pathways, whether that be into entry-level retail or care sector or professional jobs. So we work with sort of law firms that might be offering lawyers in their country of origin a paralegal job, because we're very much about supporting people into work, but also work commensurate with their prior work experience and also their aspirations. So in terms of the barriers that refugees face, people will be well versed in those, the generic ones, regardless of the country of origin and the method of arriving here: lack of UK work experience, lack of familiarity with the labour market. The big challenge and difference between this community and the people that go through the asylum system is the asylum system can be very lengthy and you cannot work. So that's a 25-year period is the longest I've seen. So that becomes a big barrier. That becomes the primary barrier that we have to overcome. Ukrainians is slightly different because they don't have that lengthy gap created by the asylum process, but there are other challenges, housing being one of them, and more stable permanent housing. So there are different issues that need to be overcome through different partners, but generally speaking, the challenges are the same. People have the appetite to work. People want to utilize the skills from the country of origin, and organizations like ourselves are set up to equip them with the English support and the access to job opportunities. On an optimistic note, I would say that the outpouring of not just public support for hosting, but the business support for hiring refugees has been huge. And we're currently, or going into the Ukrainian conflict, we're supporting around, or working with around 50 businesses from a range of different sectors. The interest has dramatically gone up, and we're in the process of converting those employers and vetting them, making sure that sustainable and appropriate recruitment pathways are put in place. So more and more opportunities over the next 6 to 12 months are going to appear through charities like ourselves. So I would really urge people who are referring individuals, or individuals who want to self-refer, please do get in contact with our services, because we are here to help. And if we aren't in a region that we have job opportunities or support, we can very much, well, we know the best organizations in those locations and regions to introduce you to, whether that be employment support, education support, or English language, or actually any other complex needs around housing, immigration, or mental health support. The other element I think that is really valuable here, and this is something that we've witnessed as a major barrier for those that came through other schemes, is a lack of networks. And I think what the Ukrainians have through the hosts is access to networks that I think are incredibly valuable. Whether that be through having someone look at their CV, to introducing them to a friend of a friend of a friend who has that sector specific knowledge. Sometimes that can be better than the support that we can provide as charities in terms of the generalist, generic employment support. And we can work with hosts to help them tap into their networks and complement that with generic employment support as well. But anything that you can do to facilitate those introductions, as I'm sure you are already doing, is a major advantage. The final positive that I'm looking to take out of this is, I think, a good thing about the scheme is that people aren't predominantly being hosted in London. And I think one of the things that I would encourage is to especially for those that are thinking about moving to London for jobs, is that it isn't something I would necessarily recommend. Whilst there is lots of economic opportunity, there's also cost of living, and from the employers that we work with, it's far more competitive in London. So I would really encourage people to look at job opportunities regionally, and also if there is a necessity to move within the UK, to kind of think outside of the capital because of the challenges in finding work. So just to leave it as that, there are lots of organisations providing specialist support. We're on a journey as much as everyone else, but we're really eager to learn and also to support people as much as possible, both Ukrainians and hosts. And then a final point is, if people as hosts do think that their employer might be interested in going on the journey towards hiring Ukrainians and other refugees, please do reach out, and we'd be very happy to work with them to help unlock more job opportunities.
Thank you, Matt. Really helpful. One of the comments that a few of the comments that came up, and this is on us, was asking for translation. We tried really hard to figure out a way to do live translation for this event, and it's beyond us this time. So what we're hoping is, by the time we get round to the next event, we'll have simultaneous translation. I think what we're going to try and do this time is, once we've finished the presentation this evening, we'll go back and ask someone to subtitle it for us, so you'll be able to follow along that way. So a few of the questions, Matt, were just asking simple things like the organisation you work for. Can you explain it a little bit more? And also, I guess this is to all of our presenters, it seems like we have a good number of people watching who are English as a second language speaker, so we might need to slow down a little bit. And so tell us a little bit more, Matt, about breaking barriers, and are there direct things that people watching here tonight, some of the hosts, can do to link people directly to you? Is that something that people could do?
Yeah, absolutely. I would encourage people to look at the website and look at what the referral process is. As much as we're confined to the West Midlands, Greater Manchester and Greater London based on our hubs, we do have at times capacity to support people remotely outside of those regions, although that's not necessarily something that we can guarantee. But given the majority of our support is delivered online, that becomes available to people. In terms of the journey, someone would be referred to us, and then we would assign them a caseworker or an employment advisor who would be there to support them through their journey with breaking barriers. We, as much as possible, recruit a pool of employment advisors that reflect the refugee community as much as possible in terms of language skills and cultural backgrounds, in order to be able to communicate with those more effectively who have potentially slightly lower levels of English, as well as building trust, which I think is really important as well. And where that isn't possible, we complement that with volunteer translators who can accompany people to make sure that they can access that support effectively. So they will provide them with generic ongoing employment support, CVs, interview skills, support with job applications. We then complement that with English classes wherever necessary. We make sure that our classes are evenings only so that people can access them whilst working, because we recognize that quite often people's first job isn't their desired job, and people need to have a retail job for 6 months as they get some financial stability, but long term they want to, or medium term they want to return to being a lawyer again, or a doctor again, or a dentist. So we offer that flexibility in terms of access. And then where appropriate, we would refer someone forward for our training and employment opportunities with our corporate partners. So an example being care tech, we have recruitment pathways to the care sector. Retailers, we're piloting something with Uniqlo in the next couple of weeks, as well as we work with professional service firms like Bank of America, BNY Mellon, Western Union, Allen and Overy, Ipsos Mori, who offer a range of professional roles for refugees from a professional background.
Fantastic. Matt, thank you so much. And I guess a shout out to two groups of people here. If you're in the regions that Matt mentioned, then please reach out and see if Breaking Barriers can help you, if you're a refugee or if you're a host assisting a refugee to find work. But maybe your family, someone in your family works for a company that isn't yet connected in supporting refugees. Well, that would be another way that you could reach out to Matt and see if your company can do something. So thank you, Matt. Please stick around. Lots of questions came up while you were speaking. There's never going to be enough time to answer all of them. Someone asked a question though. So why are we helping Ukrainians find work? We only signed up to offer accommodation. And at one level, look, offering accommodation is fantastic. It's incredible. You're doing something absolutely amazing in helping a Ukrainian have somewhere safe to live. This week, some civilian targets, more civilian targets were shelled. Places that were considered safe were shelled. Even though some Ukrainians have started to go back to Ukraine, safe places were being shelled. Innocent children died. And so the fact that you are providing somewhere safe for people to live is amazing. But some of the hosts, I guess, are feeling like there's more, we've got more to give. We've got more capacity. That's not true for everybody. But if you have more capacity, helping someone to make a connection, to get a job is a game changer, because it begins to bring independence and a sense of integration. It does wonders to the language, as we'll see later. So, this is optional. The government's asked you to provide housing. If you want to go above and beyond, this seminar is here to help you, help people make that next transition. Now, I'm really excited by our next guest. Every time I speak to her, she gives me something new to read, but also gives me a new and fresh angle. And so I'm delighted that Claire from Corn Ferry is able to join us. Claire is an expert at recruitment. And I wonder, Claire, could you help our guests, recognizing some of them have English as a second language, just navigate some of the complexities of what it's like applying for jobs here in the UK?
Of course, Chris, thank you. So as Chris said, my name's Claire. I work in the boards practice at Corn Ferry, so mostly placing board directors. But I've also spent a lot of time volunteering with young people who may be struggling to enter the workplace, to help them through the interview process and set out into the world of work. And what that's taught me, to Chris's point, is that whatever level you may be at, in whatever industry, everyone feels exactly the same way before an interview. And there's quite a lot you can do to make the process successful and ensure you present yourself and your achievements in a clear and what I think is key, confident manner. So I wanted to touch on four parts really today that I think might be helpful. CV, and then breaking down the interview process a little bit. And obviously, please let me know if you've got any questions as we go through. So with the CV, as many of you know, there's no set format for a CV, but I think the most important thing that we see is that it's clear and sets out your strengths. Really, particularly in the UK, a CV is seen as an opportunity to shine and point out what your skills are and what you're good at. So on top of the normal basic information that you'd expect in terms of name and contact details and education, you would set out perhaps your job experience in terms of the companies you've worked at, as you'd expect, but also maybe add a bit more information rather than just your role title and the company and the dates that you were there. So, for example, rather than just state what you did, add a bit of colour. Maybe if you led a project, explain why you were asked to lead it and what impact it had in the company. I certainly think that it's not bragging, it's just proof that you have had certain achievements to date that would be relevant to the company. And I would certainly try to add a bit of information in around that area. Also think about what else you might have done that's relevant outside of work experience. So work undertaken in the community can be added, or if you've been a school governor or helped with a charity. All this will give an employer a broader sense of your experience and also give them a chance to ask wider questions in an interview to get to know you. I would also add, depending on the role, and if you have time, obviously, you may want to tailor it to the exact role you're applying for. So just tweak your CV just to show the exact relevant skills that you've got and give yourself that extra chance of being asked to interview. And as was discussed before, try to get someone to read it through with you, perhaps your host or someone else you're working with, just to give you an idea independently if there's something else you could add to improve it. Another thing that I think is quite key is if you haven't already got one, to set up a LinkedIn account. A lot of recruiters now look on LinkedIn to find people relevant for jobs. So it opens up a new avenue for you to be contacted because your skill set is being spotted by someone without you having to apply. If you can make sure your profile is live and up to date with your current location, that could be really, really additive. Moving on to interviews, I think the key point I always stress when I'm talking with candidates is how important preparation is. And there's a few easy things you can do to make yourself more relaxed and at ease. I don't think it's important particularly what you wear, obviously be formal, but also comfortable. But I think if you're going to a meeting in person, what's really key is to plan your route, particularly if it's an area you don't know well, and take a little bit extra time so that you arrive early. You can always sit in a reception for 15 minutes and read through your notes before you go into the interview, but that would be much more preferable to being late. Obviously, a lot of meetings, such as this one, are now on Zoom. So make sure, again, you get ready 10 minutes before and make sure there's no distractions. Try and shut out the cat if there is one, or if you're in a shared space, if you can have half an hour's privacy. Obviously, if not, don't worry. People are really understanding. We've all been through it in the pandemic. I've certainly had colleagues and candidates speaking in children's bedrooms, in sheds at the end of their gardens, with flatmates around the table. It's fine. But if you can have some space and privacy, it will help you to be more confident when you're answering interview questions. And also, obviously, start early so that you can test the tech. It's incredible how many times Zoom suddenly doesn't work just as you're entering a meeting. You don't want to be feeling overwhelmed before the conversation started because you're a couple of minutes late getting into the meeting. Following on from CVs, if you've written one and applied with it, then have a copy with you. It's easy to reference during the meeting. Understand why the job you're applying for appeals. Practice your reasoning before. So make it clear it's something you've thought through rather than, I just need a role. Every employer would like to hear why this specific role appeals to you. And if you've practiced your answer beforehand, it helps with being a bit more confident. obviously saying that I appreciate this situation has arisen out of circumstances that many of you didn't foresee, and that brings different challenges and requires a clear mindset. So I think you don't need to be negative about why you're in a certain situation, but perhaps really think about what positive attributes you can bring and why you're the right person for the role, even if this might not have been a job you would have considered applying for before. So others of you might be coming back to work after time out, after maternity leave, for example. Here in the UK, we're moving towards a far more inclusive workplace where different experiences, cultures, and backgrounds are valued. So it's okay to be authentic and discuss your circumstances. And I think that's one of the positives of the last few years. But I think either discuss your circumstances if you have a recruitment contact with them beforehand, so they can advise about hybrid working maybe, or flexible working, or maybe bring it up as a question at the end. Don't open with a point because that might seem a little bit forceful. There's no need to hide it either, as long as you're presenting it in a positive way. If you're given some preparation material, read it or ask someone if they can read through it with you. If you've got access to the internet, look up the company. And the other thing, if you have time, I would really recommend doing is look up the person interviewing you, because they will often be on LinkedIn. You'll be able to see where they went to university, what other jobs they've had, find common ground potentially, particularly if, for example, they've joined the company recently. You can ask how they found joining it, how they found the culture, and what they recommend about the role and why they've stayed. Other general questions to have ready to ask are, what would my role look like day to day? What are you working on at the moment? What does a day in the life look like for you? How might I be involved in that? Are there opportunities for training? All of which will open up the conversation and hopefully make it flow a little bit more easily. I think as well, interviews, like all of us, are normal people and they like to talk about themselves. It's quite incredible how few people look up the person that's interviewing them before the meeting. And it really shows to the person doing the interview that you've done that extra preparation. And the same is true for the company you're joining. You do a quick Google search if you have access to the internet, find out how the company is doing, and see if there's anything in the news about them before you join the interview. I also think general knowledge is quite useful. Try to be aware of what's happening in the UK so you can speak with some ease. So where possible, either speak with your host, maybe look on the BBC website, which has bite-sized up-to-date news, and keep up to date that way. I think the main thing about the interview is that everyone, no matter what level they're at, gets nervous before an interview. I think Tiger Woods said, I've always said the day I'm not nervous playing is the day I quit. It's really important to acknowledge the nerves, but try not to be too distracted by them. It's completely normal. And as a general rule, an interview in the UK will be an informal introduction. Take this as an opportunity to smile, relax, listen to what the interviewer is saying. Obviously, for a number of you, English won't be your first language. So it's okay to take time to think through your answers. And it's okay to say to the interviewer, can you repeat the question? Or I didn't understand a particular word. The main thing is to be confident. I've spoken to Chris a lot about this. Confidence really boosts performance. It multiplies success. It will really impact the way you come across. So try to be confident in your presentation and answers. And if you don't know the answer, it's fine to say so. Say, okay, I can't answer that completely, but I have another experience that I think is relevant. I've done this, and when I worked on X, Y, or Z, I learned all of these skills, which I think would be pertinent in this role. So I think the main thing I'm trying to say is smile, enjoy it, be positive, be yourself. Every interview is a learning experience and an opportunity to grow your network. And everyone, regardless of level, wants to work with people they like and can have fun with, and will want to stay in touch with you if the meeting's been a positive experience. After the interview, make sure, if you can, if you have the interviewer's details, send a short message afterwards, thanking them for their time, and call the recruiter if you have one, to let them know how the meeting went and ask whether you might hear back and when that might be. And try to be patient waiting for outcomes. In my role, I see people that have to wait for time. It's very difficult to be patient, but if you can, try to be, and enter a number of different processes. If you're not successful, hopefully you will be, but if you're not, try not to take it personally. It's wasted energy that you can apply to something much more productive, like applying for another interview or learning and increasing your skills. Instead, I'd always ask for clear feedback so you can, and if appropriate, I'm connecting to your interviewer on LinkedIn to increase your network.
Thank you, Claire. I know I've learned a lot from listening to you about interviews and CV. It seems, we just did a little poll while you were speaking, that the level of English across our guests really varies. Some have almost no English at all. And so some of the things that we're talking about, it's a bit into the future. Others have excellent English, and so what you're saying is bang on for them. Just a question about kind of career development. If you don't feel confident in your English, should someone think about taking an entry-level job? You know, for example, the person that we're hosting is a lawyer by training, but her qualifications are not recognised here in the UK. And so in order to build up her English, she's taken work in a local coffee shop. And, you know, you could look at someone's resume and go, oh, you know, lawyer, high-powered jobs, suddenly not so high-powered. What's your advice there for someone, particularly if they're struggling a little bit with their English?
I think it's a really good question, Krish, because ordinarily I would advise someone to wait and find a role that was within their sphere relating to their qualifications. But I completely understand these are extraordinary circumstances and people will want to get into work. It's a brilliant way to increase your English skills as well. So I think in that instance, it will be clear on a CV why you've taken a role that might look completely different to everything you've done to date. And I can see why that would be a good decision to take whilst moving towards maybe getting back into the sphere of work that you're used to. Because as you say, it will increase your English, it will increase your network and your confidence, which is all imperative to getting that next role, maybe in the sector that you've always worked in. And any employer will understand why you've made that decision and probably see that as quite a courageous move to take in order to progress in a new country.
I've seen that even in the chat, this tension that people are used to doing significant jobs and the only jobs they're being offered are relatively junior cleaning jobs. And that feels quite disempowering for some, particularly if their English is good. While for others, when they, as we've been saying, they need confidence building, they need their English back again, taking that entry-level job might be appropriate. So there's no one size fits all. And that's, I guess, the challenge of putting on a seminar like this, is that everyone's host and everyone's guest in a slightly different situation. So thank you so much for what you've shared. People were asking questions about, and this may come up with the DWP later on when we talk about universal credit and benefits, but people are worried about not having clothes to wear to an interview because, you know, they've fled a country in the middle of a war zone. So any advice from your perspective on clothing?
Yeah, I think as long as what you're wearing is clean and ironed, and I'm sure a host would be able to help with that, then I think that is appropriate. It does not need to be a shirt and a jacket and a tie. I think having an opportunity to feel comfortable in what you're wearing and that being ironed and smart is enough. I think there are a number of charities that are helping in this regard, and I will find some information and share that with you, Krish, that are using clothes that maybe people don't need anymore or are the wrong size, for example, and helping people that need them for interviews in exactly these circumstances. So I'll find out a bit more information after this and share that with you.
And someone asked me, are there like websites or tutorials that you could recommend that a host might kind of watch in order to support their guest who might not have a prepared CV? Is there any materials you could encourage people to look at?
I think there's a lot of advice on the internet. There's nothing I can suggest in particular. I'd be very happy to maybe speak to people again about that and do a bit more in depth about what would go into a CV and how that would be appropriate. Every CV I've seen always looks different. So, but there are, yeah, I'd be very happy to go into that in a lot more detail.
Yes, I can fully recommend your webinars, helping people with interviews. We did an hour together helping Hong Kongers, and it was game changer. It's already helped me in some of the things I've been going after. So thanks for doing that. Claire, thank you so much. We look forward to hearing you again at the end when we have a kind of free-for-all Q&A, but we appreciate you giving your time on a really hot and sticky day after a long day's work. So thanks for being with us tonight. It's been a pleasure. Brilliant. Oh, thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for the encouraging comments. And I understand not everything's going to fit everybody, but as you know, with nearly 95,000 Ukrainians here in the UK, there's a whole range of different circumstances that people are coming from. I've had the privilege of getting to know Tanya all over for a little while now, and she's brilliant. She's a person that's come to the UK as a refugee, but she has trauma expertise. And so I caught up with her recently to ask her to explain some of those tensions that we've been talking about around identity and that feeling of a lack of confidence here in the UK. So over to Tanya, and then hopefully she'll join us live for some questions.
Let me introduce myself a little bit. My name is Tanya, and I'm a refugee. I'm here at the moment in England for a little more than 2 months. And I'm here with my 8 years old son and with my mom, which makes a lot of difference for me, as I know that lots of women came just along with their kids, and that's really difficult for them because they need to find, if they want to find jobs. And as I see, like most of the people, most of the women of moms, they would love to find their jobs. And what they're facing is where to put their kids, and they are struggling to leave them alone sometimes. And I know that some of them are doing that. That's more or less fine in Ukraine. And now, as I see, now they're trying to get together. So maybe one of the moms could, look after 3 or 4 kids, and the rest of moms could have their jobs. So that's really a very important issue, which I almost not facing because I'm really lucky enough to have my mom to help me with all of these things. Yeah, so, and before coming here, I was in 3 other countries. I was moving a lot. And that was also, now I'll talk about it from like a psychologist from mental health point, because I found myself in a situation when I feel like I'm losing my confidence by having no ground, having no stability, having no understanding about my future, being in limbo all the time. I would find out that I'm kind of losing this, even though in Ukraine, I'm a businesswoman. I was running my own business for years, and I was involved in mental health. I was delivering seminars. So I had a very great life that, I think many people can look and say, wow, that's really life I want to have too. Yeah. So, but even though like I would feel, I had lots of confidence in my background. Really, I'm very confident. I had my business. I had to struggle with lots of situations in my life, and that was fine. Now I would find myself like lost, and that's what I see when I'm talking to women from Ukraine. So, and with this background, they are here now. They are in a new place. And when they start, they have to face this red tape things, the filling like thousands of papers, which is really kind of a little strange for us, to tell the truth, because we have our, like, sorry, has to say it, but we have our idea, we have our like documents online. We can do so many things now online. So that's a really little strange. Sometimes you ask is it possible to fill it in online, but it's not. So yeah, it's time consuming. Look, me, I can speak English. I understand these things. And I was filling in all these forms for me, for my son, for my mom, you know, really lots of time. Then if you look from perspective of people that don't have this privilege of speaking English, just because maybe they are speaking German, Spanish, whatever, doesn't matter, you know, they have to ask all the time people to help them. And it wouldn't add anything to your confidence, because you are like in this position of asking people all the time, could you please help again? And they understand that's a lot of work. And, you know, they just the next step, they could be more shy to ask about something. And it's not, and this shyness, yeah, this lack of confidence, it's not what you want when you are looking for a job. And that's how I see, for example, some ladies that I'm talking with like hundreds of Ukrainians, some of them really with a great education, with great experience, just because they don't have good English or have a very little English, they are happy to get like jobs like cleaning somewhere. I mean, any job is fine, and it's good, it's fine to start with anything, I believe.
Tanya, thank you so much. Your wisdom and your grace are just so evident in this conversation. It's been really nice to spend some time with you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, Krish. Thank you.
Brilliant. I think Tanya can join us live from France. Good to see you, Tanya.
Hi, yes, nice to see you, Krish, too. Great
It was
seeing you
so
again.
helpful to
Yeah.
hear your perspective, and just reading the comments, particular from one lady, what's her name, Diana Ismailova, is talking about this lack of confidence. Her English is good. She feels, you know, she's got the skills, but just doesn't feel confident. She's worried that she'll apply for a job and they'll reject her because she's Ukrainian or because she's a refugee. I'm just thinking, Diana probably represents lots of Ukrainian women right now in the UK. What would you want to say to her, Tanya? How can we help her?
Well, Diana, you know, one of the important things in UK is diversity. And you can try to keep in mind that it's something you have and you could put to your CV that is important for your employers. So just keep in mind that it's very your advantage.
That's good. I think you're right. Lots of companies want to support Ukrainian refugees right now, and so may
Yes.
open more doors than normal. But you spoke earlier with me about this confidence issue, and it might be interesting for hosts to hear that people that had high-powered jobs and, you know, didn't have any anxiety now because of the war, because of the language, because of this new culture, they're not behaving in the way that they're used to themselves.
Yeah,
What could a
absolutely.
host do to kind of encourage someone that's feeling like that?
Well, you know, I believe it's very important. Well, in my case, it was such a great support from my hosts. It was just incredible help. Only because Lucia, my host, she would tell me that it's a country of opportunities, and it's really easy to find the job here if you just want it. So with this mindset, I was starting. I was, of course, I had this lack of confidence, as I told, but her words were so supportive all the time. that's, yeah, I believe that you can talk in this way with your hosts. And also you could, of course, if you have time, just help them to talk about maybe work they are interested in, maybe helping them with cover letter, because that's what we don't have in Ukraine at all. And we don't really understand how to, should we write it, what should it be there, even though if we read it and, you know, then if you have a little bit of time, yes, please help your guest with that.
Thank you, Tanya. Tanya, you gave me half an hour of your time earlier in the week, and we recorded it just in case the internet didn't work, because you're up a mountain right now. So
Yes,
it's great to see
right.
you. But I'm going to put a link so people can hear the rest of what you had to say, because you bring such a helpful perspective. And I'd really encourage hosts to watch it, because we might have expectations of how our guests should be behaving and should be acting, but we need to be aware of the trauma that they've been through, and therefore they'll need more assistance than maybe other people in different circumstances. And some of us are from the kind of world of fostering, and we talk about a trauma-informed approach. So every touch point we have with a person that's been through trauma, we need to think, how can I make this as helpful, encouraging, positive as possible, because that will help someone who's suffering with these traumatic, anxious thoughts. But thank you, Tanya. Stick around. We're going to talk to you again at the end when we have lots of questions from our audience. But thank you for joining us from up a mountain. Very kind of you.
Thank you, Krish.
Excellent. Okay, we have two more speakers, and then a chance for just a free-for-all on questions. The first speaker is oh my goodness. Our first speaker is from Apora, and Yegor has become a dear friend, and I love what they're doing. Yegor has Ukrainian ancestry himself, so he can help us, again, understand some of these cultural perspectives. But Yegor, we're over to you. Lovely bookshelf. Good to see you. Great beard.
Thank you. Melting
Over to you, Yegor.
from you. I take the bit inspiration from you, Krish. Thank you for having us. My name is Yegor Lanovenko. I'm from a charity called Apora. Krish, if you don't mind, I'll just say hello to Ukrainian guests here, and in Ukrainian, that's okay. So доброго вечора усім українцям. Я буду говорити англійською, але, будь ласка, якщо когось цікавить інформація чи переклад тут не англійською, приєднуйтесь до нашого телеграм-каналу Опора. Там десятки тисяч українців отримують поради і підтримку. And I'll switch into English now. And so we're here a little bit about Apora. We are a new charitable organization that we set up in response to the war in Ukraine, with a primary aim to facilitate sustainable rebuilding of lives, of Ukrainian lives here in the UK for those that were affected by war. We support tens of thousands of Ukrainians, up to 30,000 now, through our information and support channels online. We developed a matching platform to help people find sponsors, and sponsors find guests. But we are very focused on the sustainable rebuilding and what comes next, and very excited to hear from so many people here in this webinar. And Krish, thank you, and the Sanctuary Foundation for organizing, because getting to work is key to that sustainable rebuilding and making this relocation a success, as the war unfortunately drags on and on. So on employment, what we wanted to share is some of the observations from the lived experience of the Ukrainians in our network. A lot of this has already been mentioned, so I'll try and cover the other sides, or give some examples and practical examples. So on employability, two things I'll talk about, and how we support, and you could get support as well, is we support very much like Matt's organization around helping businesses and getting businesses to encourage them to create programs to hire Ukrainians, whether it be through very high skilled employment or less so, to create the pathways to work. But we also offer a lot of business support and business grants to Ukrainian refugee-led businesses who are either rebuilding their business that they had in Ukraine or are starting fresh in the UK. So she will share observations from this work that our team and volunteers have been doing. So in terms of employment and what we're seeing, as you've been hearing, there are two groups of people looking for work in Ukraine, very general grouping there, but effectively this very skilled and high skilled population who have led a career, maybe a corporate career, a multinational organization, or a highly skilled profession, and they know what they want to do, maybe, right? They think they have a path, and what they could do. And we've done a lot of data analysis on our guests and what their skills are. And I think because of the scale of this program, is how many people have been wonderfully accepted in the UK by hosts like so many of the people joining here. We're really seeing such a diverse range of skills, from technology, from accounting, finance, HR, creative industries, all of the industries that are very well developed in Ukraine. And these people are looking for jobs here. And then, of course, there is a group of people, a category of Ukrainians who are, without those higher skills or without the experience in a specific sector, who are looking for any opportunity to start generating income and, rebuilding their lives and regaining agency in their life. So observations that we've seen, very much what people have shared, but what I would add around is do not underestimate the difference in kind of the employment landscape and the process of recruitment, and the kind of employability skills are really key. From CVs and the difference in CVs that has already been highlighted in some of this, we're seeing a lot of it, from putting very photographs to using descriptions of words that when you translate the CV, for example, may translate. We're using online translation tools, may not, to translate to the words that you would expect to see on a CV, and those styles are very important. Putting in very practical small things like putting in the Ukrainian phone number on the CV leads to, or the address back in Ukraine, leads to a lot of the automatic recruitment systems on the really big websites potentially filter those candidates out, because they're set to only accept people with a UK address or UK phone number, small things like that. And something that none of us probably think about, but when you create even your own email address, you put in your name next to the email, and it shows up when you email, and that is spelled in Russian or Ukrainian in Cyrillic alphabet. Again, that is a common filter that we see that gets triggered. So some of those simple things that can create a barrier, unintentionally, I'm sure, and I hope, but create barriers and obstacles to employment. And those screening systems have not necessarily been adjusted. And then on, to share another one on around qualifications, right? I think translating and transferring qualifications is a challenge, but there are organizations that recertify diplomas and degrees and other professional qualifications. And I have to say the UK industries and association bodies have been excellent at providing opportunities. For example, Ukrainian lawyers have a much easier pathway now to employment. Ukrainian teachers have very recently, Department for Education, relaxed some of the guidelines. So, we're seeing those steps. But if there are obviously professions that require recertification, there are organizations that do that for an amount, but there is support available, and it's relative. Sometimes it's around £20-30 going to take for them to recertify common professions. So definitely look at that. On the kind of less skilled or less professional employees looking for work, what we really see is, and this is an incredibly generous scheme. If you think about the fact how many people are able to work immediately upon arrival and start looking for that opportunity, it is transformational to how some of the refugee and asylum schemes worked before. But we see that a lot of employers, unless they're kind of the larger employers, are still not familiar with some of these concessions that have been made, and actually what are the employability rules for Ukrainian refugees. All they think is Ukrainian refugees, and they have a preconception in mind of what they look like or what that means or what their rights are. But we need to share and educate. So if you see a simple practical thing that you could do if you're helping your guest, or if you're a host, or if you're just hearing from their experience, again, you don't need to be helping them, of course, but as somebody said, but if you're engaging with them on this, if they're facing challenges from their employers, they went into a job interview, very common story, went to a job interview, haven't received my BRP yet, they need a share code, they need my BRP, so they don't. There is a great link to Department of Work and Pensions that outlines exactly that they can start working through their stamp. So there's a lot of information available that has not been disseminated as widely as it could. So that's a simple sharing of information from government sources that you could do or help your guests do to share to help create those opportunities, because that shouldn't be a barrier. And I mean, more broadly, this is Tanya mentioned this, but this is incredibly important. And childcare is quickly becoming and will be a significant barrier, considering how many women and children with children arrived and families arrived. Similarly to the access to the rental market. Again, there are programs in place that allow for through universal credit and other benefits, for some of the free childcare. It is not always enough to cover the full scheme, but there are, start helping your guests, talk to them about the realities of childcare so they can start to plan. It's similar to the rental market guide. Eligibility doesn't always mean availability or access. We've certainly through Apora published a few guides to navigating the rental market for Ukrainians, navigating medicine, a few others, and will be more coming. So helping people manage expectations to start planning in advance and getting them familiar with the realities of living and working in the UK is very important. Krish, I know you wanted to come in quickly.
Brilliant, Yegor. Lots of love for the Ukrainian in particular. Some requests for just maybe a word of encouragement to our Ukrainian viewers who are just struggling with this whole work area. Feel free to speak to them in Ukrainian and give them a bit of encouragement.
Oh, and now you're putting me on the spot, but absolutely. I can do. I absolutely. I think I'll do it. Я начну по-русски, мне так будет, наверное, легче. I'll try it in Russian, it'll be a bit easier for me. But все, что я бы хотел сказать с первого, это что очень много возможностей доступны украинцам, и все, что люди сталкиваются, если вы ищете работу по специальности, и вам не хватает переданного диплома, или вы ищете какие-то другие ресурсы, есть очень много помощи, которую можно найти через разные организации, включая Опору, включая многие других, поэтому подсоединяйтесь, ищите помощь. Если вы ищете работу, и многие сталкиваются, любые работы в ресторанах, в пабах для начала, как вы ищете, очень много мы видим, люди сталкиваются с тем, что не все работодатели знают, что у украинцев по этим схемам есть право на работу с первого дня по приезду. Поэтому, если это происходит с вами, если это все, что вы видите, то есть ссылки, государственные ресурсы, которые подтверждают ваше право на работу. Поэтому, если вы с этим сталкиваетесь, то напомните этим работодателям об этом, они могут этого не знать. Это так в очень быстрой суммации о том, о чем мы говорили, но очень много полезных советов мы можем дать и после чата, и по нашим каналам, поэтому присоединяйтесь в Опору, и мы, конечно, поможем информацией, чем сможем. Krish, that was my absolute whistle-stop summary in a different language. Because
Yegor, thank you. Lots of people wanting some of those follow-up guides, and we will post the Apora link into the chat so people can see that, and we'll make those available. But we're really grateful for what you're doing. It's brilliant, and good luck with the new charity. Has it just been approved? Is that right?
Approved, subject to certain changes, so not publicly registered, but we're very excited to have made progress, yes, with the Charities Commission. It's been a great experience, so looking forward to that.
That's great. Thank you. Brilliant. We'll bring you back again after the DWP have helped us, and lots of questions there. I know one of the questions that came up was around working from home back into Ukraine. What are the issues surrounding that? So we'll bring that up again. Now, loads of you have got lots of interesting questions that revolve around universal credit and how much work you can do. So I thought let's go straight to the source and invite some of our friends from the Department for Work and Pensions. This is a non-political environment, so these are civil servants doing their best with all the changes that have taken place in government. I've realized again that our country would just grind to a halt if there weren't civil servants doing their job. So we're really grateful for you. Thanks for giving time on a hot day as well, after all the chaos there's been in government recently. But can I invite our civil servant friends to join us? I think we've got Molly, Paul and Stu. Over to you, and then I'll come in with some questions when you guys are finished. But thanks for joining us.
Cheers. Thank you, Chris, and thank you for the nice words about civil servants. It's quite a challenge being a civil servant at the moment, but we won't get into that this evening. Evening, everybody. Just a bit of background who the three of us are. I'm Stu Bennett. I'm the operational lead in DWP for Afghanistan and Ukraine resettlement. With me, I've got Molly Salford-Brown, who I've invited good, friendly people from the greatest city in the world. So Molly's a partnership manager in Greater Manchester. Molly's done outreach events with the Home Office with Ukrainian citizens, so he's well versed in what she's going to talk about. We've also got Paul Akopsky, who's a work coach in Greater Manchester as well, and Paul will touch on his Ukrainian ancestry as well. So we're going to touch on quite a number of topics tonight. It'll be quite a whistle-stop tour of them. But to support, I provided Chris with lots of resource, which hopefully he'll be able to share in the chat. But quite simply, there's a lot of resource online on gov.uk. There's pages understanding universal credit. There's YouTube channels which have universal credit in action. They talk about working and earning and how it affects universal credit, which Molly will touch on. But if people do Google searches on them, they're quite easy to find, very useful, both the gov.uk and the YouTube channels. The updates we'll be talking about is we're expecting citizens have already claimed universal credit, and this will be around helping people into work. I will say, just if people haven't claimed universal credit, they are eligible to claim universal credit. We know the number of people who come from Ukraine doesn't really match the numbers who've claimed universal credit. And yes, some people will have gone into work. Some people might not want to claim. There could be a whole host of reasons, but a plea, if anybody hasn't claimed, they're entitled. So go on again to gov.uk and apply for universal credit. Topics we're going to cover, because Molly and Paul are the brains of this operation. They'll be touching on help and advice for someone looking for work, and we'll touch on the Find a Job website, being better off in work than benefits, work allowance for claimants with children, and we've seen a lot of chat about children, childcare costs, self-employment. I've seen a number of comments in the chat about self-employment, and then support once people do get jobs, so they'll touch on that. But before I hand over to Molly, just a little bit of an update of some of the work DWP's been doing with employers. We have a national employment partnership team. It's the UK's government's single point of contact for employers pledging job vacancies in response to situations both Afghanistan and Ukraine. And there's a dedicated gov.uk page. The teams works with these employers and turns their pledges into job adverts, then shares them with the job centres in readiness for people from Ukraine, but they're also open to any applicants. DWP also shares details of these job vacancies with the Refugee Employment Network, a charity who work with over 200 refugee support organisations across the UK to ensure these opportunities are widely advertised. They'll also reach non-DWP customers, advertise these opportunities on their online job boards and share them with their member organisations. NEPT, our National Employment Partnership Team, also host events with employers to understand the recruitment support available, because as much as, hosts may be confused, employers are confused as well, which Molly will touch on. It's not old rules where if you worked more than 16 hours, your benefits stop. That doesn't apply anymore. They'll also send details of the vacancies around, as I said, all our networks, and they'll get employers to join local jobs fairs. So that's quite a lot of the work we've been doing in DWP to make those employers who are really keen to employ people from the Ukraine and make that available to our staff. I'll shut up now, and I'll hand over to Molly. So over to you, Molly.
Thanks, Stu. So yeah, some of the things I'm going to touch on is around universal credit. it's difficult when we're talking about benefits because there's so many different scenarios, so many things that will affect individuals. But as Stu said, universal credit, it's not about how many hours you do, it's about how much you earn. So we'll encourage people to start looking for jobs, whether it's a few hours, if that's what's best for you, or full time. And also, if you are in work, you should still perhaps look to see if universal credit can still support you. So we know it can be more than 16 hours. Lots of people think that they have to work under 16 hours. That's not true at all. Because as you start earning money with universal credit, there's something called a taper. So as you start earning, your universal credit amount can go down. But at the minute, for every £1 somebody earns, they can keep 45 pence of that while claiming universal credit. And then we have something with that called a work allowance. So the work allowance means that for some people, if you've got children, and if you haven't got housing costs at present, so you're living with your sponsor, you can get £573 as a work allowance. So that means you can earn £573 and it won't affect universal credit if you are a single person with children or if you were claiming health elements as part of your universal credit. But job centres will be able to explain this in more detail, but it just gives a starting point, so you're aware of that. So as an example, say somebody earned £600 and they were a single person with a child. They didn't have any housing costs. They would keep that £573 of the 600, and then we can apply that taper as well to the remaining amount. So you then keep the 45p in every pound. So that could mean that you'd only actually lose £14.85 of the £600 you'd earned. So I know talking figures, but there are benefit calculators as well on the .gov website. And you can go on those and you can answer a few questions and it will tell you how much you'd be better off. And you can put in different scenarios just to see. So that's always worth going on, and we can share the details of those benefit calculators. But if you have got children as well on your universal claim, you will get a child element. And if your child has health conditions and they're perhaps getting disability living allowance, which is something should be claimed for, then you could get an extra element on your universal credit as well for support for that disabled child. And something we're talking a lot about is the childcare costs. That's coming up quite a lot, isn't it? So with universal credit, we can help pay up to 85% of childcare costs, up to a monthly cap. So that monthly cap currently is if it's one child you're claiming childcare costs for, we can support up to £646.35p. And if it's 2 or more children, we can support with £1,108.04p towards those childcare costs. We would ask that the childcare provider needs to be registered with Ofsted or the Care Quality Commission. And it is quick and easy to claim those childcare costs back through universal credit, because we'd then add them to your universal credit payment. So it's always worth exploring that, because that's available on top of what the free childcare through the government as well. So they're just a few little bits in terms of what's available, just to start giving you that extra information. But as Stu said, there's lots of YouTube videos that would give more, and your work coaches within job centres as well. They will support you with the questions you have. Self-employment's come up a few times. So yes, you are entitled to work in a self-employed capacity if you've got the right to work. We have dedicated self-employment work coaches within the job centre. And the other thing just to let you know of is we do have support we can give for clothes towards interview, and also travel costs to attend an interview at a job. And when you do go into work, we then can look at supporting you further with your travel costs into your job until you get your first wages through. So I'm going to pass to Paul now, so he can give you a bit more information on the help that we can give for job searching. Thanks, Paul.
Дуже дякую. Добрий вечір. Я називаюся Павло. Я тут народився в Англії. Мої родичі приїхали як біженці після Другої світової війни. For all those who didn't understand the word of that, my name's Paul, and I was born here in Britain from parents who arrived into the United Kingdom as refugees after the Second World War. So I work as a work coach. I deal with lots of Ukrainians at the moment in the area where I'm in, and there's 5 basic steps which I go through with them. First one is I will assess their English level skills. We have had people from basic right through to talking fluently. What I would say is that ESOL classes is your first point of call. That's the first thing that you need to sort out is an ESOL class. Contact your adult learning college and speak.
Sorry, I think it's the fan noise.
No,
We can't quite hear you.
it's
It's
not.
not you? No?
No,
Oh,
it's
okay. Maybe it's someone else. I think we need to bring everyone else out so we can hear you clearly. We're enjoying it, Paul, and thanks for starting us off in Ukrainian. That was beautiful. Over to you again.
Thank
Sorry.
you. Okay, yeah. So first point of call is your ESOL class, and to register with local adult learning college. First of all, what they'll ask you to do is take an assessment so that they know which class to put you into. Most now, obviously, we only have a week left of the term before they break up for summer, so we'll start in September 2022. Secondly, register on as many websites as you can looking for work. Now, I'm going to name a few. There are others available, so there's no favoritism, apart from maybe Indeed Flex, which actually provides a Ukrainian site. They have Ukrainian speakers working for them and a great resource for looking for work. But obviously, Total Jobs, CV Library, Monster, others are available. Thirdly, I've seen questions coming up regarding CVs and do we pay, do we not pay? If you speak to your work coach, they will put you through to the National Career Service, who will provide this service for free, and you'll end up with a professional CV up to standard of the British job market at the moment. So very, very important. The other thing that we've found is find out where your local Ukrainian church or Ukrainian club is. They are located all over the United Kingdom. There are basically 2 organizations. There's the Organisation of Ukrainians in Great Britain, AUGB, and also the Federation of Ukrainians. Now, both have websites. Just go online, find your nearest centre. What you'll find with these clubs is that you'll get refugee shops, will provide clothes for you, also valuable contacts regarding work, where there's lots of Ukrainians who've settled here over the years, who have their own businesses, are always looking for employees, and also it's a great way to socialize. Your kids can go to school on a Saturday, learn their Ukrainian, job offers, lessons, and social gatherings. And finally, if you speak to your local job centre, we have vacancies for Ukrainian refugees. There's thousands of jobs out there, and there's a lot of specific ones. If you actually ask your work coach to have a look at the jobs which are advertised for Ukrainians, there's jobs there on farms, in retail, hospitality, lots and lots of opportunities out there. And the other thing with Eastern Europeans is very hardworking, will get on with the job. You shouldn't have any problems with them. So very employable. Дуже дякую за вашу увагу. Thank you very much for your attention. Back to Chris.
Hiya, just
Amazing.
before we go back to yourself, Chris, just wanted to say we know there's a lot of comments and questions that probably a lot of them are for DWP. Whether we get a chance to get through them all this evening, don't know, but we're going to take them away and we'll work through them. The ones that would concern me is where there doesn't look like there's been a great service from a job centre. We have 750 job centres. You know, we know they will vary in service, but we can pick that up. And what I do every week we have 37 districts. I have a call with a district lead every week, and what we'll do after the call is look through some of the themes that are coming up and address those and pick those with our district lead. So if it's, people aren't talking to citizens about interview clothes and things like that, we'll say these are the things coming up. I've seen a lot about rural areas and commitment of looking for work and travel and some of the challenges there. So we'll pick that up with all our teams in DWP, but we'll also come back to yourself, Chris, with some of the answers.
Amazing. We'll push that out through the database as well. Just a quick one that came up from Rusty is around translation. So if they're going to visit a work coach or they're just coming in to talk to someone at the job centre, what do we do about translation?
We do have in DWP, which also answers some of the other questions I've seen in the chat, we do have a supplier who we use for translation, DA languages. So one of the things I've seen is a couple of people have said they want jobs as translators, and DI languages are recruiting at the moment, and the self-employed jobs. And they're, as you can imagine, they're really struggling for staff. So it has been a challenge for all government departments because translation services, supplies have been short, but that's the process we use. Molly, Paul, have I missed anything?
No, unless you've actually have the luck of having a work coach who speaks it fluently.
There you go. But we can't accommodate.
That doesn't mean you can all come to me.
No, we can't accommodate everybody in Greater Manchester, unfortunately. But yeah, there is. So DA Languages are our supplier. I think they're based in Manchester as well, but they are recruiting at the moment.
Brilliant. Well, we really appreciate you guys. Stick around on the call. We're going to bring everybody back now and try to answer some of the questions that have come up. As you said, some of them relate directly to you guys at DWP, but there's also wider questions. Yegor, let me throw the first one at you. Some people have got questions about carrying on a job in Ukraine from here versus getting a job here. From your experience, what advice do you have for people?
Absolutely, it's a very common situation, especially amongst IT workers and many others. I mean, first of all, it's great to be able to continue having those opportunities. It is, however, quite a nuanced tax question. We do have a guide on the Apora website, which is to remote working, which was put together with the help of international tax advisors. But effectively, so there's a couple of things to consider. We won't go through them all, but it's definitely possible. There is a taxation treaty in place, but there are articles that allow you to not pay tax in 2 countries. But it is quite a sensitive matter that you do need to register with HMRC and fulfill a self-assessment above a certain threshold, but definitely encourageable. However, what we see is that the salaries that are offered to remote workers, right, very often are below, the 12,000, for example, £12,750 tax-free wages. So, people start to look for both jobs or for another job on top of that as well, if not other, but definitely doable with some considerations.
Thank you very much, Yegor. A few questions of clarification. I think I heard you say, Stu and Paul and Molly, that it used to be you couldn't work a certain number of hours and then you were in a problem with your credit, but it's about how much you earn now. Now, I guess people are worried that because this is often mothers with children and they're going to have to rent a house at some point, they're hoping, in the future, earning enough money to be able to rent a house is difficult because of the cost of rental. So people are nervous about losing the kind of housing component of their universal credit. Is there a sweet spot that people should be thinking, I'm in danger if I earn a little bit too much over this barrier and then I'm in trouble? Is that just a wrong way of thinking about it?
It's a very difficult question because, as I say, universal credit has so many different elements added. So everyone's individual situation is different, and that's why I would really encourage people to use a benefit calculator, because they can go on there and put in different scenarios to see what would be the best off for them, and see how the sliding scale of universal credit works. So there's about 3 now, 4 I think, on uw.gov website. If you just put in there, benefit calculator. If people would need a bit more support, then we also have citizens advice they have a help to claim line, and they would do a benefit check with people.
Excellent.
Can I just add to that? The amount that you do receive universal credit as a single person, for example, is just over £300. Now, based on minimum wage, you'd earn that in a week. So you are better off working than claiming. And yes, your universal credit may drop to zero, but it doesn't mean we'll close your account. We keep it open for 6 months as a safety net, just in case something doesn't quite work out with your job.
It's great. Quite a few questions about, and maybe this is Matt could come in here, about this recognition of qualifications. So people that have come as lawyers or teachers, what do we do if they are recognized, their qualifications are not recognized? What do we do in that circumstance, Matt?
I think it's very much on a profession by profession basis. And I would, there are various organizations in the refugee sector and beyond that focus on equivalency and recognition. There are a couple of refugee charities that specifically focus on supporting people who were working in the medical industry in the country of origin, RefuAid being one of them, who support people with requalification through a bespoke pathway with the GMC. So I would suggest reaching out to employment-focused refugee charities who can provide guidance as to what industries require what level of qualification, but it's very much profession by profession, depending on what the industry body requires.
Great. Quick question back again. Again, maybe this is someone from DWP. If mum is present with her mother, so a grandmother who's looking after children at home, does that put her in a different universal credit situation?
Is that in terms of childcare costs, or if the childcare is provided by a family member, that wouldn't be something we could fund, because it would need to be somebody registered, as I mentioned before. So we wouldn't be able to fund for a relative or friend to look after a child.
Okay, so you basically wouldn't be able to claim childcare costs for your mother to look after the children. Is that right? Unless she was a qualified, ratified childminder.
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
Excellent. All of you can feel free to look through the comments if there was a question that's come up that you really want to take a look at. Claire, we've had quite a few comments about this lack of confidence piece, and how do we help people returning to work with all that trauma. Confidence is a kind of specialist subject of yours, I know. So any advice for our Ukrainian friends who are struggling with confidence?
I think even though perhaps an interview in a different country is an unknown, and that can obviously affect confidence, as can many of people's experiences more recently, there's also a lot they can draw from, I imagine, in terms of what they've experienced and how well they've coped. The fact they're here and the fact that they're part of this seminar is a huge step towards getting employment, and they should be incredibly confident in their own resilience and skills to be able to do that. And I think drawing on that sort of experience and taking confidence from it is a really positive way to try and take the next step.
That's really helpful, isn't it? Like, I don't know about you, but I'm so in awe of the way that our Ukrainian friends have dealt with so much. Mums that have really put their children first. They've fled a war zone. They've left loved ones behind in order to get their children to safety. These are heroes already, and now they're going into a job interview, and they think, I don't need to be afraid of this because I've already done something heroic with my life. I'm a winner already, even if this interview doesn't go the way that I expected. Couple of questions around the amount of work. Maybe you could help with this one, Paul. If someone really wants to do a lot of English classes or maybe start some study, but they seem to be under a bit of pressure from the job centre to work more hours, how do people wrestle with that? What can you do if they recognise maybe they want to to kind of pursue the ratification of their professional qualifications in law, for example, but they're working so many hours in a coffee shop that they can't actually do the work they need to do in order to become the lawyer that they are. How do you balance the amount of hours that the job centre might be asking of you?
It's very difficult, but there are sliding scales. If you have a child under 2, then it's 0 hours are expected to work. Then it goes to 0 to 16 for up to 3-year-olds. Then the government will provide you with 15 hours free nursery. So that's why you'll be allowed to do 16 up to the A, and then it goes from 3 years to 12 years old. It's 25 hours. And once your child reaches 12, they deem it that they are safe to make their own way to school and come back again. That's when we expect to have the 35 hours. So can I just clear up that there's a point that has come up in the comments regarding when I mentioned the single payment, that the single payment wouldn't even cover a month's rent, which is on average £350. Rent is in addition to the single allowance. So for example, if somebody is paying £450 rent, they will receive that in addition to their single allowance.
Okay, that's really helpful, Paul. Is there an upper limit for the rent? We've noticed that a lot of the people are living in relatively wealthy areas because those are the hosts that have been able to have space to fit a new family in, and they're struggling to be able to rent a property in those areas where their children are already settled. But is there a kind of maximum limit that you can claim for rent?
I'd advise everyone to go and look at what the local housing allowance is for their area, because it is different for every local authority area. So if somebody's in a more, say, affluent area, then the local housing allowance can tend to be higher. So it's a very different rates, and they're all available on the Gov website.
Excellent. We're coming to a close in a minute. I'm just going to give everyone a chance to say one final thing. If you do speak Ukrainian, feel free to say it in Ukrainian if you'd like to. But let's start with Matt, and then we'll go to Yegor, and then Stu. Anything by way of last words you'd like to say to our guests or hosts that are listening this evening? Matt, you go first.
Thanks, Chris. Well, sadly, I don't speak any Ukrainian, but in terms of final remarks, I would suggest reaching out to Breaking Barriers and other organizations like Yegor's who have knowledge of the space, and even if we're not able to support, we should be able to point people in directions of others, because we work closely together and we tend to find each other. So anything that we can do to help in terms of our support or introducing to others, we're here for everyone.
Brilliant, thank you. Who's going next?
Absolutely, I can go next. Absolutely. Likewise, my main piece of advice and takeaway from everything we've seen from the lived experience of all Ukrainians is start thinking about the next steps now. And the sooner you start thinking about it, the better. And there is so much support and information packs and everything available for organizations across this table and many others. So почніть думати про роботу та наступні кроки зараз, а не пізніше.
Дуже добре, very good, very good. Let's hear from Stu next, and then Claire, and then Tanya.
Yeah, sure. I would just say DWP. There's a lot of fantastic, great people working job centres. 2 of them are on here tonight. If people haven't made claims for universal credit, make them, and there is a lot of support out there. So Molly and Paul have touched on it, childcare costs, interview close, things that we've seen in the chat. So if you're not getting that service from your job centre, keep pushing with the job centre, because they should be providing this sort of service and this sort of help to everybody.
Thank you, Stu. Claire, and then Tanya.
Like Matt, I don't speak Ukrainian either, unfortunately, but thank you for being part of the panel. I found it really, really interesting, and understanding a bit more about it myself as well. I think from my perspective, preparation is key, whatever level that job is. So speak to whoever you're going for the job with, see if they can give you some more advice in relation to that role, that extra nugget of information that might help, at whatever level that role is. I would say if you can do more preparation, that is only ever going to be really helpful.
Wonderful, Claire. Thanks for joining us. Tanya, over to you.
I'll speak Ukrainian. Добрий вечір всім. Ми з України. Слава Україні! Героям слава! Ми обов'язково переможемо. Ви всі неймовірні. Ми маємо дуже класну підтримку світу. І обов'язково все буде Україна. And in English, you will be absolutely fine. You are really, as Krish just said, you are all heroes. And just keep it in mind. You are just, amazing. And remember that. And you're doing great thing. Slava Ukraini.
Slava. Very good. Wonderful. Thank you. Molly, and then Paul, and then I'll finish up.
Just want to thank you all for giving us the opportunity to talk to us today. We're in DWP, we want to give you all that support we can. If there's any worries, any concerns, so talk to your work coaches, and good luck. We've got loads of employers that do want to support and are specifically asking for people from the Ukraine to come forward and apply for those jobs. So thank you.
Thanks, Molly. Paul, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Дуже дякую за вашу увагу сьогодні вечір. Не забудьте, звертайтеся до нас до DWP, нам наш поміч, ми тут готові, чекаємо вас і поможемо як найбільше. До побачення вам. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you to all of our guests tonight. Really appreciate you all. Big shout out, lots of love to the DWP. It's nice to meet you, to put a face on you, and to hear your heart to help Ukrainians. We really appreciate that. Thank you. And just to say to all of our Ukrainian guests, we are going to work very hard to find a way to do simultaneous translation. It's complicated on a digital platform. If that's your expertise, please reach out to us, and we'd love to learn from you. We might have to move to a different platform. It could be we have to go to Zoom or MS Teams. But our next event, we're going to do our very best to be able to do translation live if we possibly can. And that's the one on the 2nd of August. And it's all about housing, which is a really, really big issue. And we want to do everything we can to kind of help you through that. I hope you've heard from all of our contributors that the people of Britain are rooting for you. We're glad to see you. We'll do everything we can to help you. And you have friends here. So we hope you feel welcome, and we look forward to seeing you again very, very soon. This recording will be made available, and we're going to figure out a way to put Ukrainian subtitles on it, at least for you who've not been able to hear us tonight. But thank you, guests, and thank you to all the hosts that are doing amazing work looking after and supporting Ukrainians. We really appreciate you. You are record breakers, 95,000. We expect to break the 100,000 in the next week or so, which is a game changer for Britain. And thank you for just modeling great hospitality. See you all soon. Thanks for joining us. God bless you all. Thanks.